Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is your host, CL King, coming to you live from the High Definition Studios in Impactville. I'm sitting atop the Ruthie Plowden Legacy Chair, and this time of day is always beneficial, not just for you, but for me, because I get to interview some really amazing human beings from all across the country and around the world. And today is no different. We call her our resident grief expert, and she is a friend and a sister. Her name is Hope Reger. And Hope has shared her journey of grief to hope on this platform multiple times. And her story, her mission, her purpose is so compelling that we've decided to have her on a cyclic condition. So in other words, she's stuck with us for life. And Hope brings so much compassion, understanding, versatility, and caring to the conversation of grief. Automatically, when we hear that term, it induces some feelings of anxiety and hesitancy. But grief to hope helps people to realize that, yes, grief is a reality, and we have to set in that reality. But it does not mean that we are hopeless. No, Hope has taken the concept of her very name and applied it to her outstanding nonprofit organization, Grief to Hope, where it's gathering people from all corners of the globe and helping them understand that they can still find hope in the midst of their grief. So we are delighted to have her back in the High Definition Studios, hailing from my alma mater, Ohio, Xenia, the southern part of Ohio. And she's going to spend a few moments with us. So we ask that if you're watching this rebroadcast, take down some notes, because we want you to be able to connect with her immediately and for the long term. Here's what I know, that a time with somebody like Hope Reger, even if you're feeling down, even if you're feeling like you don't know which direction to turn, when this time is finished with her, you'll have direction and you'll have more hope. I would ask that everybody put your hands together and welcome to the virtual studios, Miss Hope Reger.
Wow, I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. I love coming. I could just listen to you all day. I tell you, you could read the encyclopedia. I'd be happy.
Isn't that cool, Hope? You know, the Lord, I haven't been blessed with a lot of skills, but one thing is for sure, he illuminates things before my eyes. So it was like I was seeing all these pictures to say. There wasn't a script there for the intro. So we just, God just works that way. And it's cool when you bring somebody on who is really amazing. So we thank you for being with us today.
It is always a pleasure to be here with you.
So, Hope, you know the deal. We're going to get started. And we were talking in our pre-show. We said, the pre-show will be just a few minutes. And then we ran over because brothers and sisters can't be quiet. Tell people how they can contact you so we can get that in the show notes. That'll be in the show notes. But tell folks how they can contact you.
Absolutely. So I have my website, which is grief2hopesupport.com. You can also reach out to me via Facebook, Hope Reger, Grief to Hope. Instagram is Grief to Hope 2020. LinkedIn is Grief to Hope or Hope Reger. I'm on all of those platforms.
So Grief to the number 2 Hope support.com, right?
Yep. That's my website.
That's your website, and definitely get there and connect with Hope Reger. She is an expert, but more than an expert, she is a compassionate listener to those who are going through the grief process, and a champion for helping people realize that they can still come out on the other side and live. So Hope, I know your story. You've been sharing it here for quite some time. I think we met during the pandemic, and God just brought us together. And I love the fact that you're still doing what your passion and mission is. We've had 400 and something people on this broadcast since we started in 2019. And there are a lot of people that I go back that I've interviewed, and they're not doing anything what I interviewed them for. I brought them on, and they were changing the world. I go back and look, and now they're selling Tupperware. So I'm thankful that you have stayed the course and are committed to this message of hope. And so, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into your mission.
Absolutely. So, Tupperware, that dated you, Mr. King. That's right up there with Avon, but
It
I
is.
think it still exists. Like, I don't want any haters on Tupperware or Avon. They're great products.
Well,
And
listen,
I
but
think,
let me just parenthetically insert, since you just put that in there. My wife used to do Avon, and she had me and the kids going door to door with them little plastic bags of magazines. So we've always been entrepreneurs, but I've always worked for my wife.
I can see her making you try on some lipstick, some lotion. They had some good products. They
Yes,
do still
ma'am.
have some good products.
They do. They do.
Um, I know when we get together, it's like we haven't skipped a beat. So again, I'm from Ohio. I live with my husband Mike. We live in Xenia, which is a suburb of Dayton. I have two sons. Brian is 30, almost 35, and then Justin's forever 19, which we can talk about real quickly. And then I have three granddaughters who are amazing. Halen, Adeline, and Briley, and they are 12, 9, and 2, and they're into volleyball and dance and doing whatever they tell us to do, and that just works out. They how that is with grandkids. um but my story simply starts with, in 2016 I lost my son Justin to murder. It was in a altercation with his roommate that turned violent, and my whole world turned upside down. Like my whole, um, when I hung up from that phone call that no parent wants to have, my life completely changed, and I will never be that same Hope again. But now I look at things differently. It's been almost a little over 7 years. Things have provided, my son has provided me with a gift, and God has provided me with a gift that, um instead of being angry and upset, and I was all of those things, don't get me wrong. I was angry and mad at everything, everyone, and certainly towards the person that took my son's life. Justice didn't prevail the way that I wanted it to. I had all those negative feelings, and several months after Justin passed, I knew that Hope couldn't live um, in honor of my son. I needed to find a Hope that could honor my son in a way that every day I could serve people, and I didn't know how that was or where that was going. But when the pandemic hit, Grief to Hope sort of flourished, where I created the program, and it's been running ever since. And it's a virtual support program that I reach out to anyone and everyone that's grieving at any point of their grief. And it could be son, daughter, mother, father, parent, sister. And we just join together and just really allow each other to speak, to understand, to provide coping skills, compassion, support, love, in a space that people can be their authentic self without having to worry about putting on a mask or pretending that they're okay. And you have come on and done a session with me, and it's incredible. And you can just feel the vibe as soon as you walk in, that it's a place of sharing and caring and love. And tears are there, but also we have laughter, and we have just a great amount of emotion, but it's just an amazing place to be.
That's powerful. Again, if you're tuning in to Impacting Life 24/7 with your host, CL King, I am joined by Miss Hope Reger. She hails from Xenia, Ohio, and you can connect with her at grief, the number 2, hopesupport.com. And, one of the things that has compelled me to your mission, Hope, is the fact that you are defying maybe what the human default response would be when you're talking about losing a child. and all the emotions that you are still justifiably allowed to carry around, and I'm sure they do come with you in some measure, anger, frustration, whatever. What was the turning point that turned you? I understand that you had a mission and you didn't want to be that hope that was, down and in the cave of despair. But can you point to one singular thing, or was it a series of things that helped you turn that Titanic ship in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. When the justice didn't happen for Justin, and I remember leaving. There was an issue with simply where my son stood to where the person that took his life stood. He was allowed to file self-defense, and it was never indicted. So literally, he was never prosecuted. There was no trial. It didn't even get it like past the grand jury.
Hmm.
And I remember leaving that prosecuting attorney, the courthouse, and saying, I was angry. I had never been that angry. And you can imagine as a parent that you couldn't protect your child from death. And then on top of that, you couldn't even give them justice, what I thought was justice. And what had happened was I woke up from a nap and said to myself, okay, listen, I can stay here in this bed and not one person would doubt me, not one person would shame me, not one person would judge me for not getting out of bed or living the rest of my life in this hateful, angry state. But I said the exact words, he took Justin and he wasn't going to take me too. And so that point of waking up and feeling that incredible strength, I don't know, how it came about. There was a lot of things that happened up until that point, but it was waking up with that determination that I was going to live for my son and myself for the rest of my life, helping others fight through this ugly darkness to a point where I knew that living in a way that could serve others and could provide hope in their grief, that they didn't have to live in that darkness. They had a choice. And some people feel like when they're in that moment, and I get it, there's no doubt I understand that darkness. And that's why I felt compelled to say, you don't have to live there. You don't have to stay there. You can have bad days, you can have bad mornings, but you need to limit those, right?
Yeah.
And how you do that is following a focus and inspiration. It's called To Hope, and it's so amazing. The program is because it allows you to understand that you are in control of your mindset. You are in control of how you feel for the day. Maybe you have a really bad morning or a really bad day, but you have to focus in and say, tomorrow's going to be better because I'm going to make it better, and I'm going to put a focus to that. And that changes your mindset. And so it's not all about, oh, you wake up the next day and you're fine. It's putting in the work, right? This grief thing is hard. It is hard work. And it's taken me 7 years to get to a point where I can do certain things without the emotion, listen to a song or smell something or see something. But it's all about my mindset. Like I was triggered by people walking. And then I was like, Justin never walked a day in his life. He was 19 years old. That kid got rides everywhere. Why is that triggering me?
Yeah.
And it was changing my mindset of, oh my gosh, that's him walking with me. That's how I now change that mindset of triggering. So it's all about having a focus, being inspired every single day, and fighting. I fight grief every single day. And my son is my cheerleader. He is up there and he has given me every single thing I need for that strength.
Well, that's powerful. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I told you it was the story was going to be amazing. Grief to hope support.com. Grief, the number two, hope support.com. And one of the things that I hear, and it's so embedded in a lot of things in life, where sometimes when life happens a certain way, or we get dealt a certain set of cards, we live a certain way based off of the justification that we feel, right?
Mhm.
And it's like you say, nobody, even if it's 7 years later, would question your, if you were still laying in bed or in the dark room or whatever the case may be. But
Yeah.
I got a revelation, and I may have shared this with you, but I remember when Charity's mother passed away, and it was hard for her in particular because she cared for her mother while she was sick, hoping against hope that this care would prolong her mother's life, only to see it slip away. So she had the investment of the
Mhm.
hourglass versus the sudden shock, right? Both of them still produce these feelings. And when we went to the graveside and walked away from that grave, I remember walking up the hill, and it's like the Lord told me, he says, there is a reason why you have to leave this graveside. You're not forgetting your loved one, you're not forgetting your mother-in-law, but if you stay here, you're no good to the rest of the people that still are counting on you.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That
Mhm.
still need you in their life. This is not the end for you. I've taken them with me, but this isn't the end for you. And so to but now when we talk about a child, we all have this thought as parents that, hey, look, this is I'm supposed to, my child's supposed to bury me and see me
Mhm.
off to heaven. So I imagine that this was, the feelings that none of us want to feel. The initial part of it was pretty grievous, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in doing so, I love that analogy, like leaving it at the grave. I think that's one of the things that I look at things differently, where I look at ways to honor Justin in a different way, where memories and those kind of things, I try to look at different ways of thinking of memories, how to live in a way that he would be proud of, and that I always say to myself, if I would have went first, right, I would want my son to live in a way that would make me happy,
Right,
right?
right.
So I think that he would be devastated if he knew that I stayed in that darkness, and that the choices that he made in his life, and even though nothing that he did, caused his demise, but basically, I know that he would not want me to be in a very sad place because he knew that's not who I was, right?
Right.
And so I had to figure out how to live in a way that honored him versus just living, how I think he would have loved for me to live. I had to live, and I think that's why I push so hard with Grief to Hope, is because I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to prove that you can survive the worst tragedy by serving others, provides so much healing that I tell people all the time, people who grieve are the biggest givers in the world. And I don't know, and it's because we felt the worst pain ever, right? The worst pain that we cannot control. And
Right.
there's, excuses, we're our biggest acceptors of our excuses, right? Nobody
That's true.
else really cares about our excuses, but we do, right? And so we start providing these excuses, then we start sort of like allowing them to happen. So I could say, because Justin died, I am not going to continue to live, right? Because Justin passed, I'm going to be angry and hateful. And those excuses, I tell myself, I'm, I'm saying, yeah, you're right, Hope. You can do that. But if I say to myself, because Justin passed, I'm going to live my life for both of us, and I am going to live it to the max. And
Yeah.
no matter what that takes or how much work, every single day I'm going to get up and do that. Right. And so that gives me a different excuse, but I start to believe what I'm feeling. And
Yeah.
that's why I tell everybody, you can do excuses all day long, but excuses are just for you, right? Nobody cares about your excuses but you, or believes them, right?
That's right. That's powerful, and I'm gonna have to use that line there. I'll definitely remember that.
There you go.
For those of you tuning in, we are joined by Grief to Hope support founder Hope Reger, and you can find her at grief the number 2 hopesupport.com. And she said something that helps me segue into the next part. One of the main reasons why we brought her here today is we want to share with you an opportunity. Okay. We want to give you an opportunity to connect and contribute and be a part of something like she just articulated that's bigger than yourself. And I want to talk to her for the next few moments about the mission, because she said she's on a mission. I want to talk to her about the mission of Grief to Hope, the nonprofit organization, because now Hope, being the founder of this nonprofit, God has really expanded her role, her footprint, and her reach to more than just an online support group, but a whole lot of other things are opening up to her that are giving her opportunities to minister to people. Tell us about them, Hope.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So, being a nonprofit organization, one of the things when I started Grief to Hope was I never charged anyone for joining the group. Never, and to this day, you do not get charged for joining the group. We wanted to provide support to people that may not have insurance or EAP through their work, or just couldn't financially afford a counselor or something. We wanted you not to go without support, especially in grief. And 60 or 57% of us have grieved somebody in the last 3 years. So that's a startling statistic. And then on top of that, we leave an average of 5 people grieving, right? So that is huge amount of people. So we have to reach this network, and nobody wants to talk about grief. I tell people I have the 2 worst fears. I'm a public speaker and I talk about death. So like A1, everybody's like, no thanks. So that's how we've got to start talking about grief, and we've got to start telling people, even in our high schools, that's a mission that we need to start talking about grief, because it happens. It's going to happen. And the one thing we don't talk about is death or grief, right? And so our mission in Grief to Hope is to reach as many people as we can. And we are on a mission to globally reach people through our program, through the virtual program. But not only that, we have been graced to be, we're going to be partners with Parents of Murdered Children. We're going to provide a workshop out in Vegas in July. Bereaved parents, we're going to be providing workshops and speaking in that in Virginia. I have been graced to be a part of a local community organization for men in recovery, where they're coming from substance abuse or prison, jail. I've been going out there and providing the service in person to them. It is to reach people where they're at. And that is what the mission of Grief to Hope is, that no one ever has to grieve alone, and that you can be around others that completely get it. And we can provide hope, support, compassion, coping skills. All of that is the basis of Grief to Hope. And we need contributions, sponsorships, we need donations to make that happen. And so one of the greatest things is on grief2hopesupport.com, my website. There's donation buttons. There's always availability. Get in touch with me if you believe in the mission as well.
Well, that's what we want you to do. And I'm here. I'm not paying. I'm just making sure that I get my stuff situated. I forgot to do that, so I'm actually in the site right now, taking care of business. And that's one thing. That's one thing that I want you guys to understand. Okay, please understand this: that when someone has a mission and someone has a purpose that many of us can't undertake, but the one thing that we can do, because we understand how valid the purpose and cause is, we can get behind that person and put some wind behind them in their sails with our contributions. And Grief to Hope is not just for the 4 and no more, but it's really God has given Hope a vision that will impact many people in many different circumstances and scenarios. You know, you're getting overtures and calls to the incarcerated. Now, you know, that's one of my lifebloods and where I carry this burden at. And you know, you gave me a story that you were talking to some folks that had been recently released, and you had no clue that they would be open up about grief, right?
Yeah, so I've just amazingly I've been going to this emerge where it's men in recovery. And I first walked in thinking these guys are not going to say one word to me, right?
Right.
And because I'm coming in grief, I'm a woman, it's a bunch of men, which you, as you know, and probably the world knows, men have different expectations. We have different expectations of men. In grief, they're not the most sharing, right? But we need to
Right.
change that, and I'm working on that. And they didn't stop talking. They just opened up, and it was the most incredible experience. And I am learning from them and their grief. And let me tell you, we talked about this a little bit, like what they've gone through, what they've seen, what they've been through is something that I have never experienced. And so I'm learning from them just as much as they're learning from me, if not more. And just a side note is that these men want to be better, right? And that's exactly what Grief to Hope is all about. We want to be
Right.
better from grief. We want to go on living, right? And so grief may not be death only. It could be other things that we are grieving. Just like your wife, she was the caregiver of her mom. Now she has to grieve her mom and the identity of being a caregiver, right? That's a whole nother ball game. That's a whole nother thing that she has to grieve who she was.
Yeah.
Right. So we talk about things like that. Like when you're a caregiver and your life ceases at that moment of what your priority and your main objective was, you have to grieve that identity. So there's so many aspects of grief that just it could go, we could talk for days and days and days.
Well, you know, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate here is that you know you're looking at the various elements of grief and the various stages of grief and the various dimensions of grief. I looked at your website, of course, that where you break down kind of like what grief helps us focus on. Let me see here. I'm on the wrong page. You remember the acronym? Give us the acronym real quick. GRIEF. What each letter stands for?
Yeah, absolutely. So the program is set up 7 weeks. So the first week is an intro, just sort of my story and introduction to everyone else. But then we spell out the word grief and we talk about the gift of time, how time influences, how time changes grief, but also how time rushes. People rush you to get back to normal. People stop supporting you after 3 months. That's an average. You get about 3 months and then everybody moves on. Ours receive help, like talking about how can someone help you? They say that question, if you need anything, let me know, which we all know that puts the more burden on me than it is for you to say that. But we know your heart's in the right place. So how do we utilize that? And then I is inspiration, what Grief to Hope is all about. You have to find that inspiration. And then E is expectations, just like we said, men and women have expectations. People expect you to be done and over with grief at a certain time. Men are supposed to hurry up and get back to work and take care of the family. If there's so many different expectations. We also run into people that say the worst and most awkward things when we're grieving, but we know it comes from the heart, right? But
Right.
we have to have the patience to understand that they don't know what to say, right? F is feel everything, and it's my favorite session. We just had it last week where they bring pictures, share stories, memories. We asked what TV show they watched. Last week we asked what their favorite dessert was, and I have a lady from Australia that joins me, and she was telling us the difference between cookies and biscuits, like their biscuits are our cookies, and just amazing kind of things. And then the last is to hope, and it's basically what's your next step? How can we help? Where do you want to go? Short term, long term, and how to focus to get there. And it may be something, CL, where it's, I just want to go through their things. Or it could be, I want to write a book, or I want to blog, or I want to start my own support group. It could be a million things, big or small, but it's moving towards those each and every day. And that's what Grief to Hope stands for.
That's so powerful. And she didn't stop there, ladies and gentlemen. I almost feel like one of those late night infomercials, but wait, there's more, right? You also put together a book that you released a couple years ago. Tell us about that.
So Grief to Hope, the book, is actually all the proceeds go to the nonprofit. And it's my story. A couple years ago, actually, I'll tell you the real truth about how the book started. Is I did not make a TEDx speaking engagement. Like, I applied for TEDx. I thought I was in it. I was like in the running. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And then they're like, no, we're not. So I took that, and I talk about it all the time, but I took that failure, because we all have to fail, right? That's how we learn. And that's where the book sort of came and developed. Was I took the time, because when you're a TEDx speaker, you have to, like, there's a lot of work go into it. And so I took all of that time that I would have devoted to that and writing, finishing the book, Grief to Hope. And it's basically my story, how, in more detail, of course, and then how I moved into developing the program of Grief to Hope.
Yeah, and I'm glad they didn't pick you. You know what, they missed out. I told somebody the other day, they found out I was a speaker, and they're like, "Oh, do you do TEDx?" I said, "I don't think TEDx would have me, because I'm a little unhinged for TEDx." Same thing with what's that other one where you learn how to speak? What's that place called?
Oh, Toastmasters.
No, I would not do well in Toastmasters. They would say he's breaking every single rule in the sun. And so, it's funny like that. Like you say, sometimes when one door doesn't open, God says, I didn't want you to go through there. I got
Yep.
another one that's so much better for you. And look at
Yep.
that. Now people can get the book in their hand. So you can get the book in your hand. You can connect with her. You can make a donation. We need your support today for this mission of Grief to Hope. Just go to grief, the number 2, hopesupport.com, and you'll help turn some lives around. Like I said, it's like the Titanic. And some people may feel listless. They may just feel adrift. And so hope can help us and help them get some clarity and direction, because we don't want you to just be drifting out to sea, but we definitely want you to be pointing your sails toward hope. And so, Hope, what are you got all these things coming up? You said you're going to, where did you say you're going to? Las Vegas. How are you getting out there?
I know. Parents of murdered children. I'm going to be doing a workshop and speaking engagement with them in Vegas. And then in between there, we're taking a little vacation to California. And then we're going to go to Virginia for Bereaved Parents of USA. They have a conference there. We have been so blessed to be a part of that. We're going to do a workshop there. And these are in the second, last 2 weeks of July. So we're going to be out there doing a lot of great things.
Well, that's awesome that you're going to be out there. We will be with you in spirit, and we'll help send some finances, get people to support you, and keep this mission going. So this is a tradition that we've developed here, and I haven't done a podcast in a while, so let's see if I still remember how to do it. I should have told Greg to give me all the notes on what I'm supposed to do in this job here, because I'm the host, but I done forgot how to be a host. Oh, how about share your screen there, King? How about that? So I always like to share, for those who see our video presentation, I always like to share the gentleman that we've been talking about for the last 30 minutes, a phenomenal young man. Can you see his picture there, Hope?
I do. He's a handsome fella.
He is a handsome fella. And we dedicate always these sessions to Justin and his memory and legacy. And I know you're making him proud. We'd like for you to take a few moments and just speak to the audience and give them a word of encouragement, if you would, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I talk about is having patience, and that's where grief comes into play. Um, you have to have patience with yourself, with others, with your grief, and to know that there's no right or wrong way to grieve. There's no defined moment of when you should hit a finish line, but know that what you're doing is powerful and that you're courageous and you're so strong. and that to grant yourself patience is the most important part in grief, and to know that there are tons of us out here that are willing and want to help.
There are many out here that want to help. And one thing that I always get strength from is seeing that there is nothing like a mother's love for her son. There's nothing like it. I think I'm a really cool dad, but there is nothing like a mother's love. And we're so thankful for you, Hope, and demonstrating to us that there can be hope available, and that life can still be lived even in the midst of grief. So, Hope, we thank you so much for spending your time with us. We thank you so much for giving of your time to so many people throughout the country. And we look forward to continuing to support Grief to Hope for many more years to come, okay?
I love you, sir. Thank you.
All right, we love and appreciate you. You just stay right there. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to tell you thank you for turning into Impacting Life 24/7. We appreciate your sponsorship to Grief for Hope. And all you got to do to get there is go to hopesuppport.com. We look forward to seeing you. God bless you.